I've been asked a number of times about the Freedom Caucus and our strategy on the floor, so I'm going to just give it to you real quick and try not to distract too much. But our strategy has been to use every procedural tool available to slow down the velocity of the left turn of the Democrat leadership in their party. We've never seen a change in rules that have narrowed the scope and the participation allowed to the minority party like we have with this particular administration. They've altered the rules. They've kicked Republicans off committees. They're not marking up any bills. They're just bringing them straight to the floor. They continue to have military presence and fences around the people's house, and they continue, even though that the security personnel have indicated there is no threat between members of Congress towards other members of Congress, to wand and send us through magnetometers, all trying to be symbolic. We've endured multiple hearings about people who question the integrity of the last election, which the Democrats did for 4 years towards President Trump. We've endured the repeated hearings calling those people domestic terrorists. We've seen the hard left turn on policy where they've attacked the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, changed electoral integrity issues to actually legitimize processes and procedures which don't bring electoral integrity. They spent $2 trillion in a bill that barely addresses the COVID issues, and now they're failing to, at the same time that they're failing to deliver on border security, and we have a crisis on the border. We're going to be voting on amnesty bills, which continue to be a draw. So we, at the Freedom Caucus, want to avail ourselves of the last and few remaining procedural tools in the toolbox, because what it does is it slows down, and that's one of the obligations of the minority parties, to slow down bad policy, bad ideas, and then to create narrative about that. And so that's what we're trying to do. And with that, I'm going to talk about now the crisis on the border. Biden's border crisis, and Biden's inhumane border crisis. At a time we're facing this crisis created by this administration. This administration created that crisis. We should not be debating and passing amnesty this week. We should be passing meaningful reforms, which is why I have introduced the Stopping Border Surges Act that actually includes solutions. The Biden inhumane border crisis is preventable and would have been preventable, but this administration refers to it as a challenge or a problem. They deny what's happening on the border. Instead of building on the hard work of the Trump administration, this administration is singularly focused on undoing the successful policies. The most visible example is the border fence. President Biden had terminated the declaration of a national emergency at the southern border and stopped construction on the border wall on his first day in office. Well, and thanks for getting back to the immigration issue. Well, that is being ignored. And in fact, if you remember, someone actually, a Republican, mentioned that there were people from the terror watch list that had been mentioned, and we had a mainline or left stream media outlet say that was a lie. It's not a lie. And that's why when Chip says, and why all of us say, come on down to the border. I take people down to the border all the time. Yvette Harrell will take people down to the border. And when you get down to the border, attend a briefing, if they'll give it to you. A lot of times the agency won't give briefings to the media. I don't know why, but they won't. But you'll hear the intelligence briefings, and what you're going to hear is that there's nobody that's coming across the border that the cartel doesn't approve. So the way that those people they get across that are coming from these states that sponsor terrorism, this is the way they do it. They flood a zone. And if you've been there, I mean, Chip was describing seeing 15. I've been there where I've watched 55 people walk across the border. 2 coyotes, 53 people coming in, everybody's got a kid. All of the agents have to go and deal with those people. In the meantime, we had one agent who happened to spot the real purpose for that flooding of that zone, and that was people coming across with loads of drugs. The same thing happens with special persons of interest that are crossing the border. They flood the zone, they bring them across. technology. The cameras are coming. The cameras gets focused on a zone over here where it's flooded. Cameras missing the people over here. We can't got technology. Chip was talking about one agent doing 3 miles. That is not unusual. That is not unusual. And you're having literally tens and dozens of agents being removed from the border to go to facilities to process and manage that. For instance, in the Tucson sector, if you bring somebody in and you apprehend somebody at the border, it can take you 3.5 hours to transport somebody up to a location where you can hand them off and get back in. You might be gone 7 hours out of a 10-hour shift because you've caught 1, 2, 5. Our border is porous right now, and we are left unprotected.
Andy, can I add something to that?
Sure.
I'll just add, just night before last, echo what Andy just said. This is important. I was right there. We had 7 that were apprehended. They're put in a vehicle, and the 2 Border Patrol agents had to sit there waiting for transport for 2 hours. Now they're off the line. They're sitting there holding those 2, and now they're not patrolling that entire sector. Meanwhile, we later found out narcotics came up right through that same stretch because they don't have the manpower to do it. They don't have the resources. They don't have the cameras. They don't have the ability to stop them. And so we're leaving Border Patrol completely hanging. The last point is we've got foreign countries, and we're talking about the terrorist sponsors, that are now funding campaigns in Mexico, right? They're buying off the politicians in Mexico because we're creating essentially a narco state with empowered cartels with now outside countries coming in and funding it. We're doing this. We're allowing this, the United States of America, by leaving it wide open. Yeah.
So we appreciate all of you taking time out to be with us today, and with that, we're adjourned.
Thank you all. You're right, Hamas.
And he won't call it an emergency yet. I'm talking about President Biden, yet he sends the Federal Emergency Management Association, FEMA, to the border to stop what's basically an army of people coming over wearing the same uniform. They're wearing Biden T-shirts. This is what's happening. They're flooding the border. The number for February of 21, this past month, 97,000 border apprehensions. 1 year ago, 30,000. 2018, 25,000. So what happened is people realized that Biden and the Democrats want to give asylum. They want the once you're here, you can stay idea that President Obama was so famous for. If you're caught, catch, and release, try again. Trump stopped that. That was we were having in excess of 100,000 border apprehensions until Trump put a clamp on it. Here's why it's super important. Forget the human trafficking. It's a horrible thing that's going on. The drugs that are coming over, I know all too well about the drugs coming across the border. Awful. Disease that's coming across the border. Terror, crime, all these things. Here's the biggest problem that we face as conservatives. Okay, forget the country for a second. As conservatives, if you listen to Pelosi and Schumer right there, the soundbite that you set this whole thing up with, they're going to try and reform immigration, which means if there are 12, 13, who knows, 20 million illegals here, the number keeps rising under a Biden administration. If you go and reform immigration and allow a pathway to citizenship to those anywhere between 11 and 20 million illegals who are here, they're done. 80% of those people, there's a Pew study that says 80% of those people who would be allowed to be citizens, allowed to vote, will vote Democratic. You will never, ever see another Republican president, maybe not even another Republican senator in America if you allow this to continue on at this current path.
So despite all the people rushing toward the border and people interpreting it as a crisis, which is on both sides of the aisle, they're recognizing, yeah, we've got a bit of a crisis down there. What's the disincentive, or let me put it this way, what's the incentive to stop it? Because it appears to be part of their plan.
Yeah, well, the only incentive is what I just pointed out. Human trafficking is flooding the border. Drugs are absolutely flooding across the border. I spent last summer at the border going to drug crossings. I was in tunnels, drug tunnels, climbing through the U.S.-Mexico border. The disease that's coming across, we know that COVID is a big problem. We're not even sure we're testing everyone that comes across the border. Look at the pictures you're rolling right now. How are you going to test everyone? And the crime wave that comes with these people. It's a fact. It's a known fact that this causes a lot more crime here, a lot more disease here. And forget the fact that we're $28 trillion in debt. How are we going to pay for all these people's health care and schooling once they get here? That's the incentive to stop it. Make it legal. Like President Trump said, Okay, it was called the Migrant Protection Protocol, which means if you want to come over to the United States and declare asylum because you're being threatened, you feel like your life is being threatened in a foreign country, it's what we do. We allow that. Stay in Mexico, Trump said. Stay in Mexico and we'll get to you as soon as we can, as soon as the courts allow it. Biden just rolled that back last week. He rolled that back. He said, no, forget that, which means it's a magnet. President Biden has allowed a magnet for people that want to come over here and get the American pie. Come on over. Our borders are open for the taking.
Yeah, but Eric, just your take on this. This is what President Biden had to say, trying to reverse that come on over thing. Listen.
It's going to take some time, though, to get those policies in place again. Do you have to say quite clearly, don't come?
Yes, I can say quite clearly, don't come. And what we're in the process of getting set up, and it's not going to take a whole long time, is to be able to apply for asylum in place. So don't leave your town or city or community.
Well, it's a little late when they're already on their way, and we're already talking about reaching, what, a 20-year high when it comes to crossing the border. And as you answer this, we're going to roll some footage that you were just talking about of the underground tunnels and things that people are using to get here, which they don't even have to use now.
Yeah, that's me getting into a tunnel on the U.S. side of the border. That tunnels straight over to the Mexico side, and there are literally thousands of these. We have absolutely no way of knowing where they are, when they are. President Biden was forced to say, don't come. Right. He didn't say it on his own. Stephanopoulos pushed him into the corner. And we do know, both Stephanopoulos said it and CNN's own report. CNN's reporting says that these people have been interviewed. They're coming because they feel Biden will let them in. They're flooding the border. You know what? 97,000 border apprehensions in February. I'd almost bet I bet a lot of money that going forward, until something dramatic happens with Republicans, I don't see him doing it, that will be over 100,000 border apprehensions going forward every month until, I don't know, until someone on the right gets some guts and says enough is enough.
Right.
Governor Abbott, by the way, as we came to air, just did a press conference exactly saying what I've been saying right here. Biden has to acknowledge that this is a crisis. He's got to stop acting like there's nothing there. He has no intention of going to the border. That'll call attention to it. One final thing. I was able to do that border walk and flyovers, and I actually held the old border fence versus the new border fence. Unbelievably, like the old one's like tin, and you can basically walk through it, cut right through it. The new one you can't. Biden has now stopped allowing press to travel with Border Patrol and ICE. They stopped it because they don't want us to know what's going on.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, where real news for real people.